Hi there! In this video, we're going to create a Glassmorphism contact form. So that's going to be our project. Let me just show you the finished output first before we dive into the code. So let me just refresh this page so you can see the animation in effect first. So as you can see, when the page first loads, the entire form loads from below, right? It's a very simple animation that I've set up to give an effect of something popping up from below. And then you also have this heading, you have this nice little text shadow for your heading, and then the entire form in itself, it has the modern glassmorphism design. It looks like an opaque glass, but not completely opaque, and it's placed on top of this beautiful background. It's a gradient background. I'll let you know what that is once we start coding. And these inputs, right, they're transparent, and you can see that when you click on these, you have these floating labels that just, and then once you start typing, so let's say I start typing, the labels, they just stay right there. But if there's nothing, it just comes back. But once you start typing something, the label stays. That goes on for everything. Well, and then you have your button right here. So it has a nice little hover effect as well. As you can see, it pops up a little, it changes color as well as background color, and the entire form, and it looks a little bit raised because of this nice box shadow that we have. All right, so overall it's a very simple design. So let's dive into it right now. All right, so I have a new folder opened up so I can type everything out for you so you can type with me and you can learn as you go. So we have this folder, and inside of this folder, we are going to create two files, index.html, which is going to hold the HTML file, and then we are also going to have a style.css, which is going to hold the CSS file. In VS Code, which is where I'm typing the code, if you type in the exclamation point, you'll get this. Okay, so emmet, it's an emmet abbreviation. So you get this boilerplate HTML code, everything is pre-written inside of it, and you can just change the title to whatever you want, which is going to be Glassmorphism contact form in my case. And then obviously you'll have to use the link tag to link to the style sheet like this. And once you've finished all of that, we can get started with our code. Now, before I do that, I want to let you know that I'm using this extension, the one called Live Server, this one, and I'm going to use this to create a live server basically, which would let me know what's happening, without having to save things every single time. Okay, and also I have autosave on right here. All right, so let's get started. To start with, this entire thing is actually a section of a page, right? So I'm going to create a section tag, and I'm going to give this a class of contact like this. All right. And then inside of it, it's going to have a header with a h1 tag that says get in touch like this. And then we can also have a paragraph tag that says we'd love to hear from you. Now that is the extent of the header. Now once you're done with the header, you can start with the form. And inside of this, for every single input, we're going to have input div element like this, which will have both of the inputs as well as the labels that are floating up that you saw in the introduction. So first of all, we're going to have an input. The first one is going to be a text input. It's going to have an ID of name. We need the ID so we can link the label to the input box. And then this is going to be required. I'm going to make the autocomplete off. You can, have this on or off based on your preference. When you keep the autocomplete off, basically it doesn't really give you any suggestions from your browser. And then you have the label. All right, for now this is where you have to give your ID name. I gave right here, right? So basically this lets your browser know that this label is for this particular input box. Okay, since IDs are unique and only this input box will have this ID name, this label will only be for this ID. Okay, here you just have to give the name, your name like this. All right, and now let's just copy and paste this two more times because we need the same thing happening for this one. Could be email, type email, and ID here would be email, and this is also required, and the autocomplete is going to be off for this as well, and it's going to be for the email box, right? Now that's done. And similarly, we're going to do the same for subject. This is also going to be of type text and it's going to have ID subject. This doesn't really have to have an autocomplete off because your browser isn't really going to have subjects. But if you want, you can have this autocomplete off. And it's going to say your subject like this. And here you're going to make sure it's for subject. Okay. And finally, we're going to have our text area. This is also going to have a div of input, but also a div of text area. So we can design it a little bit different because text areas, we need to make sure that they can't be resized. And this one is also going to have an ID of message, and we're going to make this required as well. Again, all of this is customizable. You can do it in any way you want. For example, this whole thing could not be required if that's what you want. Now let's also, or you can choose to not have a label for it if you don't want it to have a label. And this is going to have a message called your message. And then finally, we're going to have a button. This does not have to be within a div element if you don't want it to be. This ends the entire HTML part of things. Now we only have the CSS part left. Let's go to the CSS. To start with, we are going to have certain things done. We have to import our fonts. Now, if you go and look at the output for now, we have everything. We have our title, we have our, all right, sorry about that. Okay, I'm just going to remove this. Okay, so we have our subtitle, we have the forms, but they don't really look very good. They look really, really ugly if you see. And also, I made a mistake in here. When I copied this entire thing, I guess I didn't put them inside of divs like I thought I did. So they are not inside of their own. Okay, so they should now they should look good. See, we have all of our inputs in their own lines, but the problem is they're not designed well, obviously. So to start off, we're going to import our font from Google. Right, so we're gonna have a font. You can just go to Google and search for fonts.google.com. So right here, if you see, you can get any fonts you want. I'm gonna choose the Poppins font for this particular project. So you have the font right here. You can choose the ones you want. For me, for my project, I don't really need a lot of these fonts. I'm just gonna have the regular 400, maybe the light 300, and I'm gonna have 500, and then I'm going to select 600. That's pretty much it. I don't really need anything more. And then I can just click on import and get this code from here and then come back and then paste this right here. So now I can import this font inside of my project. So to start with, I'm going to use the universal selector, which is for pretty much every single element. So I'm going to use this because I want to reset certain things. So I'm going to make the padding 0. I'm going to make the margin 0. And then I'm going to give box sizing as border box. So what these things do is, of course, you can see that the padding and the margin are going to be 0. And once I've given the box sizing as a border box, the size of the element is going to be a part of the margin and the padding as well. So it wouldn't take extra space from outside. And then we are going to also have a font family with of Poppins, the one that we just downloaded. Now to get the name of the font, you can go and okay, I made a mistake right here. I think I had another font in here. I'll just delete this and I'll just get the embed code again, which is going to be only the Poppins. All right, and you can get the name of the font from here. Okay, so you can just get this and you can paste this right here. Now, once you're done with the resetting, we can start with the actual design. So first of all, I'm going to align everything to the center. That's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to select the body tag. See, as you can see, everything is at the end. There's just no space anywhere because we've given padding and margin as 0 for literally everything. So what we're going to do now is we are going to bring this entire thing to the center of the page. And how do we do that? We're going to use Flexbox for it. To start with, we're going to have to give 100% as the width. Now, the width of the body is going to be 100%. So once you give the width as 100% and the height as 100 VH, which is the viewport height, that is whatever you see right here, right? So that's going to be the height of the body. So once you've given this, you can use the display as flex and you can align everything to the center. So when you use align items center, it vertically aligns all of the elements. If you see right now, it vertically aligned everything. And then once you give justify content as center, it would horizontally align everything. So now we have this entire section tag vertically as well as horizontally aligned. And then we are also going to give our background. So I remember I told you that not background color, this is going to be background because it's going to be a linear gradient. I remember I told you it's going to be a beautiful linear gradient and I'm going to give you the code. This is right here. There are a lot of websites out there. Just search for, linear gradient generators or just gradient generators. And that's how I generated this gradient as well. So you can just input a bunch of colors and it would spit out the code for you and you can get whatever you want. So you don't have to do things manually. So you have, there you go. We have our beautiful gradient design right. So once we've done that, we can start with our actual contact form, right? So remember our contact form had an animation. So the whole thing just popped up from down to up. We're going to do that to start with. So the class name was contact, and then we're going to create an animation. The name of the animation is going to be fade in. It's going to happen over 1 second, and then it's going to have ease out, which means it starts out slow and then it just comes up. And then also we're going to give both in here to make sure that after the animation is done, it stays where it is. It doesn't really go back to its original form. Okay, so all right. So also let's give the color of the contact form, sorry, the color of the contact form as white. And then let's align all the text to the center to start with. And let's give this a width of 600 pixels and a max width of 600 pixels and a width of 100%. So this would help us when we try to make this design responsive. So when we give a max width, it's always going to be 600 pixels. But for now, it's going to look like it's small. But once you reduce the size of the page, right? So once you start reducing it, and I'll show you once we get to the responsive designs. But once you start reducing it, the 100% we have right here will start reducing as well. So now we have to create our keyframes. Let's finish that off. The fade in one that we have, let's create that. So it's going to start with an opacity of 0 and the transform is going to be translate Y of 30 pixels. Basically, it's going to start from 30 pixels below where it is right now. Right now, it's in the center of the page because that's how we've done this. That's how we've aligned it with our flex. But since we are setting up an animation, it's going to start with an opacity of 0 and also 30 pixels below where it is right now. And it's going to go to opacity of 1 and a transform of basically back to where it was. So which is the center of the page. It's going to come back to the center of the page. So from 30 pixels below to the center of the page, which is what we saw when we looked at our final output. So once we have that out of the way, let's start the rest of the designs. We're going to select our header, and it's going to have a margin bottom of 40 pixels. So there's some space between the header and the form. And then you will have to select the H1 tag right here. It's going to have a font size of 70 pixels, and it's going to have font weight of 800. Okay, very big font size, font weight, and then comes the text shadow. So 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, RGBA 0.7. So it's going to be completely black. Okay, both X and Y shadows. Looks very good, right? Now let's select our letter spacing. It's a little bunched up right now, so let's give it a letter spacing of just a little bit, just 0.5 pixels, and then the text transform is going to be uppercase. Now this is our final output for our heading. It looks really good. Now, as far as the paragraph is concerned, it looks a little bit out of touch with our heading, right? So it looks like it's in between the form as well as the heading. On the other hand, it has to be a little bit bigger and also aligned with our heading. So let's push it up a little, okay? Header P. So we're going to give it a font size of 25 pixels compared to the font size of 70 pixels for our heading. And then the margin top is going to be minus 20 pixels, which will push this up a little up. See? Nice. And then we'll have a font weight of 500 compared to 800 for our heading. And then this is going to have a lighter color. Right now, this is white in color, which it makes it pop up too much. It shouldn't pop up. So we're going to reduce the color a little like this. And if you go and see, it's going to be not white in color, not completely gray, but a little lighter than the white that we usually see. We have here basically. All right, so that's done. Our header part is completely done now. It looks really good. Now let's go to the form, which is where the main stuff is. Our Glassmorphism form. First of all, I'm going to give this a width of 100%, so it takes up the entire width of the section, which is, if you can see, 600 pixels, right? We've set this up to 600 pixels. Now I'm going to make sure this takes up 100% of that. And then it's also going to have a padding of 30 pixels up and down and 20 pixels top and bottom, 20 pixels left and right. So right now you're probably not going to see much because there is no background for this yet, but we'll get to that in just a second. And also this is going to have a display of flex, but if you just leave it as it is, it's just going to be horizontally aligned. So let's do a flex direction of column. So it's vertically aligned like this. And see, now you can see that our button is taking up the entire space, but the inputs are not doing that just yet. We'll get to that. And then you're going to align it to the center. So since the flex direction is column, when you use align items, that is horizontal aligned. So it's going to be horizontally aligned to the center, okay? Not vertically. And then also basically justify content center, which is going to vertically align this time around. And then we're going to have a background color of RGB 255, 255, 255, 0.15. Now this is where our glassmorphism effect starts. So to get a true glassmorphism effect, first of all, you have to start with a white background with very little transparency. If you go and see this, you'll see what I mean. So this is barely there, barely visible. Okay, barely visible white background. And then you're going to use the backdrop filter, and you're going to use your blur in the backdrop filter. Now this is going to give our complete glassmorphism effect. Now you can increase or decrease any of these, the transparency as well as the blur. You can increase or decrease this based on your preferences. Now the border radius is going to be 15 pixels, and then the border is going to be 1 pixel solid, RGBA 255. Similarly, it's literally a little bit how do I say this, a little bit more, visible than our background, but you have this white color border right here. And then you're going to also have to set up a box shadow. Now it's going to be 1 pixel, 2 pixels, 3 pixels, 1 pixels. Now the X, the Y, and then the blur as well as the spread. Not too much, just a little. And this is also going to be a variation of white with the same transparency as our border. Now, if you go and look at output right now, you'll see we have our perfect glass morphism form right here. Now, all we're left with is our inputs. Let's just get going with that. Okay, so let me just recap a little bit. So to get the glass morphism effect, you have to give a background color of very, white with very little transparency, and you have to add a blur backdrop filter to make it a little bit more opaque and not completely transparent. And then you have to give a border and a box shadow to add to the effect. Simple. Now let's go ahead. Okay, so now we're going to go for the input. Remember, if you go and look at your index.html right here, you would see we had this input right here, right? So contact input. The inside of the form, we had multiple inputs. Right, so I forgot to give a class of input for the rest of these. So let me just quickly correct that. So they'll all have inputs. So it'll select all of this. So now there you go. So the width is 100%, which means it'll take up the entire space, and then the height is going to be 50 pixels. All of this you can change as you want. And then you're going to give a margin bottom of 20 pixels, as you can see, which would, so it'll give some space between all of the inputs. And then you have an overflow of visibles. So whenever there is an overflow, I'll show you when we look at the output. But this is very important because there's only so much space. Even though it's 100%, it's only so much space as far as the width is concerned. And if it goes beyond that and beyond the height as well, we want it to overflow so it can be seen, okay, when we are in that particular input. And then let's look at the input inside of the input div, okay, and same for the text area. So we have both inputs as well as text areas, if you can see. So we have inside of each of these divs, we have label as well as input. So we're selecting that input and the text area. And what we're going to do there is we're going to give it a width of 100% as well. So it takes up the entire width of this div element, and it takes up the entire height of this div element. And then we're going to give it a border radius of 5 pixels. So obviously. And then the background color. Now, this is where the glass morphism effect comes into place. Now, if you give a background color of transparent, then it'll be transparent and the glass morphism effect will be even more visible. So you'll see in just a moment. And now we're going to give it a border of the same border we saw before. So a whitish border. And then the color is going to be white. Okay, and then let's give a padding for this as well. So it's going to be 10 pixels on top and bottom, and then 15 pixels on left and right. And then it's going to have an outline of none, obviously. So when you select it, it's not going to be anything else. I mean, there's not going to be any outline. And it's going to have a transition of all 3.3 second ease. Okay, so all of this is for the input. Now you can also make sure that the resize is none for this as well. So you can just give resize none, so the text area isn't resized. That's up to you as well. Now let's go ahead and select the label. So let's look at the output for now. All right, so if you look at the output, it looks really weird right now. All of the inputs are up right here, and all of the outputs, I mean, the labels are down here, and it looks like a mess. That's okay. We'll fix it just in a minute. Okay, so now let's select the labels and let's position them absolutely. This, which is why we positioned this relatively. So within this, we can position this. Okay, so we're positioning it absolutely, and we're going to make the top 50%. So it's 50% from the top, which is almost at the center. And then the left is going to be 15 pixels. So from here, it'll be 15 pixels to the right. And then let's give it transform of translate y. Okay, so why we are doing this is, now if you, I'll just show you in just a minute. If we don't give this transform, what happens is, now, if I just comment this out, let's say if I'm commenting this out, and let's look at this. See, what will happen is it's 50% from the top, sure, but it's not exactly 50% from the top. So if you don't make it go back up 50% like this by giving a transform y like this, then it wouldn't be exactly at the center like we want it to be. Okay? Vertically centered, that is. So now let's give a color of E7 E4 like this, and then let's give a font size of 16 pixels, Z index of 10, and then a all transition of all 0.5 is like this. Okay, so this is for when it goes up. So when we press on the input box, it'll go up, right? So for that. All right, and then let's also separately, because if you notice, the height of the text area was little, very little, so it should have been contact space text area. Okay, dot text area. So now it looks bigger, it looks good. And also what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the text area inside of this, and we're going to make sure that the resize is none. Okay, you can give the resize none here as well. So if you do that, you can just remove this. And then let's also select the label and make sure it's not at 50%. So it's only a little up, right, like this. Okay, so it looks better like that. And then let's look at the, okay, so what we've selected in here is we've selected the focus and the valid. Okay, so when the inputs are valid, because we've given some required concepts in here, like the autocomplete off, we've given required for all of this. So when the inputs are valid and when there is a focus on the input, which means when we're selecting on the input, and once we've typed something, which means the inputs are valid. So right now, if you type something on this, can you see it's typing on top of the labels, because we've aligned it absolutely right, so it needs to float up. So what we're going to do is, whenever that's happening, for the input boxes to start with, we're going to give a box shadow. So a very small box shadow. So let me just select this, and you'll see it just makes it glow up a little. Can you see the difference? It just glows up a little. So a small box shadow, if I'll just do this so you can see it better. So it just glows a little. So a box shadow like that. And then we're going to select the same things. So when we're focusing like this, when we're focusing on this, the sibling selector, when the input has focus, the sibling select, this is a sibling selector, which means the direct sibling, the one that's exactly below, which is why we place the label right below, because when using this selector is for the sibling that comes right after this. So any label that comes right after this input is going to be selected by this selector. Okay, so we are just going to select that sibling to make it float up. Similarly, let's do the same for our text area as well. Okay, to start with, what we're going to do is we're going to make it a top of 0, and then the background color. So what we're going to do is, once it moves to the top, so as you can see, whenever you press on this, it goes to the top, right? So, and once it goes to the top, you can't just leave it like this. You want to change its background color, you want to change the border radius, you want to change the color and all of those things. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to give a background color just like we would for any Glassmorphism effect, and then we're going to give a backdrop filter just like we did before. So it's going to be blur of 15 pixels. You can change these colors and these values any way you want, and we're going to give it padding. So just left and right padding, you'll see in just a second. And then it's going to have a font size of 13 pixels, and then it's going to have a color of 00 5069 like this, and then it's going to have a border radius of 3 pixels, and the output is going to be amazing. Okay, sorry, I'll just fix the color right here. All right, and the output, look at the output now. It looks great. It looks perfect. Okay, so this part, it's always valid, it seems. We have to fix that. Let's fix that. Okay, so for your text area, it has to be, I forgot about the focus part of things, which is why it was always valid. Now it's good. Now it's good. Perfect. All right. So whenever we focus on it, only when we focus on it, it's gonna do that. Okay, and then let's select the button because the button looks really ugly right now. The width is going to be 100%. The height is going to be 50 pixels. The background color is going to be a very light white, just like we had before. And then the blur is also going to be, okay, the blur is going to be a little lesser this time. Again, play with the colors, play with the filters, play with everything, and you'll know. You'll know exactly which one you want. The font size is going to be 22 pixels, a little bigger, and then the font weight is going to be 600. The border radius is going to be 5 pixels. Border is none, the outline is none, and then the cursor is going to be pointer. Transition is going to be all 0.3 e's like this. And then let's select the font, the button, and let's select the cover for it. Okay, when it's focused on and when it's hovered on, it's gonna have a lower transparency. That is, it's gonna be more opaque, so more seen, more white. And then let's have a color of, it's gonna have a grayish color, and then transform scale X. It's gonna be a little bigger, and scale Y. I mean, on the x-axis, it's gonna be, I mean, horizontally, it's gonna be a little bigger, and vertically, it's gonna be 1.04 bigger. So vertically, it's gonna be a little more bigger. Okay, so that's it for that's it for your button. So if you press on this, see, when it starts off, it's a little transparent. And when you press on this, there you go. It's a little bit more opaque like this. And let's go for the responsive design. Right now, if you go and inspect this, and if you look at the element right here, right now this is responsive, right? So if you increase this and if you decrease this a little, do you see? Oh, it's ugly. The okay, usually mobiles are at 400 or so, 350, 400. So right now there is just no margin. It's all bunched together. We need a little bit of a little bit. We need to do a little bit of responsive design to make sure that doesn't happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the media. It's going to have a max width of, so whenever the width is 550 pixels and less, which means, it could be for most of the mobile devices. We're going to select the header first because the heading was just too big for such a small width size. We're going to make it 60 pixels, just a little lesser than usual. And then the line height is going to be 65 pixels, again a little lesser. And then the margin bottom, we're going to make it 12 pixels, and the letter spacing is going to be 0. So if you look at this right now, all right, it looks much better. And then we're going to do the same for the font size is going to be a little lesser as well at 22 pixels. Okay, so that's all we're going to do. We could give a little bit of margin as well. Frankly speaking, I want to give a little bit of margin. This looks just ugly. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to select our contact, not just the entire section. We could select the entire section. If you look at the entire section right here, there was no margin. There was just nothing there. So you can just give a margin for that, or just for the form if that's what you want. And so you can give a right and left, so 0, right and left at just 20 pixels or something like that. And then maybe even top and bottom. See, it looks a little better like this, right? That's pretty much it for this project. So if you look at this, we'll just do a quick test. So when you refresh, what happens is that's the first animation working. It just comes from below. It's right, it'll be, not visible, and then it'll come up. And whenever you press on this, and if you type something, let's say, it just stays. Sorry about that. That didn't work. All right, what I did wrong here is even when it's valid, we need our labels, right? Obviously. So even when it's valid, we need to make sure the sibling labels stay right there. So when we are hovering over it, as well as when it's valid. So I didn't make that happen. So that's why, when it was, when this is obviously valid, it came back down. So there you go. So if you do this, this is not valid right now because or now it will be valid because we gave this a type of email, so it'll look for a type of email. So the valid is actually for all of this. You can use JavaScript to make sure that you do proper validation, give messages that says this is not a valid email. All of that is up to you. So I'm just gonna end this right here, and then you can press send message. If this was a working form, it'll send the message basically. So that's it for this cute little Glassmorphism contact form. I'll see you in the next project. Please like, subscribe, and I would love to hear from you. I always love hearing from my viewers. So please send your comments. I'll make sure to respond. Thank you.